Good evening po sa inyo lahat. Ako po si Christian Esguerra at welcome po sa ating episode ngayong gabi ng Facts First. As always, maraming salamat po sa inyong patuloy na pagtangkilik dito po sa ating programa. We have a packed program for tonight. Dalawa po yung topics natin. Unang-una, alam ko marami rito yung talagang ayaw bitawan yung issue. Kung nagkaroon ba ng malawakan daw dayaan noong nakaraang eleksyon. Pero ang tututukan po natin ngayong dito sa first part ng ating episode ay yung paano ba natin mapapalakas at mapapaigi yung ating automated election system. Identify natin yung weaknesses. Tapos tingnan natin, posible ba talaga madaya? Okay? Pero higit doon, pag-uusapan natin syempre yung solution, how to improve the system. Tapos pagkatapos po doon, pag-uusapan naman natin yung pagpanaw po ni dating Foreign Secretary Albert del Rosario. Ang dami pong nalungkot doon sa kanyang pagpanaw at pag-uusapan po natin yung kanyang legacy. Okay? So yun po yung second topic natin mamayang alas 8. Pero bago po tayo magsimula, baka lang makalimutan ko, I'd like to greet a belated happy birthday si Erica Flores. Yan. Isa po siyang estudyante ng economics sa UP Diliman. Nag-message ang kanyang kaibigan na si Lena Saturnino. And shout out daw kay Erica. Talagang nanonood daw siya ng ating programa, and actually we're able to work together before the campaign dahil kinuha nila akong moderator ng isang pre-election senatorial forum. Ang title po ng Rundown 2022, and I was told si Erica was among the organizers. Ayun, so isa sa mga kabataan natin na talagang merong bright future ahead of her. So, belated happy birthday to you, Erica. 22 years old na siya yesterday. And I wish you all the success in the world. And of course, I hope you would find your niche in this vast universe and mas makatulong tayo sa kapwa-tao natin, in particular Pilipino. Okay? So ngayon, punta po tayo sa ating first topic sa gabing ito. I'd like to welcome to our program for the first time. Makakasama po natin ang isang eksperto. Okay? Pagdating po sa IT issues tsaka sa eleksyon, siya po ang Systems Group Head ng National Movement or National Citizens Movement for Free Elections o NAMFREL. I'd like to welcome si Mr. Fernando G.R. Contreras Jr. Magandang gabi, sir, and thank you for joining us dito po sa Facts First.
Magandang gabi, Christian. Salamat sa pag-imbita.
Nagkahuntahan kami ni Sir JR ng maikli kanina. Napag-usapan namin yung certain improvements na dapat ginagawa pagdating dito sa ating automated election system. Okay? Unang-una, pag-usapan natin. Kasi nga ngayon, miski tapos ng eleksyon at medyo malayo-layo pa naman yung midterm elections natin sa 2025, meron tayong nakikitang chatter or ingay sa social media na talaga nagdududa pagdating doon sa naging resulta ng presidential election ng 2022. Ang pag-usapan natin siguro sa monitoring nyo, dahil nagsimula ang automated election system natin 2010, no? Ano ba yung nakita nyong weakness talaga?
Yung ginagamit nating election system, isa sa pinaka-komplikado sa buong mundo. Kumbaga, siya pinaka-high-tech na sistema sa buong mundo. So, ang isang challenge dito, na naging weakness na rin, is kukunti ang nakakaintindi ng sistema. So, para sa isang botante, nung sinimulan, yung PCOS na naging VCM, para sa karamihan, black box eh. So, yan yung nagiging problema sa transparency. At saka, diyan question ngayon yung integridad ng election. So, kunwari, sinong sisigurado na okay yung VCM? Siyempre, katulad ng grupo namin sa NAMFREL, sumasali kami sa mga pamamaraan para protektahan niya, katulad nga ng mga source code review, audit checks and everything. Pero napakaliit ng grupo na yung nakakakita ng So, ang nangyari kasi, sobrang pumasok sa technical yung setup, limitado na yung grupo na nakakaintindi ng buong sistema. So, pag naglabas ngayon ng isang haka-haka, minsan hindi buo yung katotohanan, partial, di ba? Hindi nakikita yung buong picture. Siyempre, pag ikaw yung halimbawa na hindi maganda yung resulta ng election para sa'yo, babalikan mo, ay, teka, parang hindi totoo yung resulta. So, ganun yun eh.
Pero nga, ano bang weakness na nakita nyo talaga bukod dun sa ang hirap siya ipaliwanag? Kaya mas Nadidinig ko rito sa ibang mga eksperto, no? Masyado raw complicated yung ating automated election system. Mahirap siya ipaintindi sa ordinary Filipino, pero at the same time, because it's difficult to explain, nandun lagi pumapasok yung haka-haka. Baka may dayaan na nangyari, di ba? Napaka-posible ba talaga?
Kasi ang nangyayari nasa single control yung yung election eh. So ang ultimately ang may power, for example, is the one running the technical part of the election. So maaring isang kumpanya lang o isang grupo no napapatakbo nila maliit na portion. May posibilidad na madaya. Pero yun nga, sa dami ng checks na ginawa, so far wala kami sa NAMFREL wala kami nakikita na concrete proof. Hindi kami happy halimbawa sa nakarang election lang yung mismong current chairman ng NAMFREL nakapuna na hindi nagtugma yung yung hash code. Ano implikasyon na? Implikasyon nun, yung dumaan sa source code review, baka hindi yun yung nakaload dun sa sistema. Pero madali namang i-disprove no? Kasi maraming checks Marami siya redundancy. Pero nandun pa rin yung agam-agam, nandun pa rin yung pangamba. Ba't nangyari yun, di ba?
Okay.
Sa dami ng ganun, tas may sablay pa, parang ganun.
Binabanggit niya yan, yung finding to ng NAMFREL, no? Ang nagsulat yata ng study ay si mismo Lito Averia, kung hindi ako nagkakamali, no? So ano uli yan? Sige, para nakikita natin
ang sistema kasi, dumadaan yan sa source code review, yung grupo namin na nag-handle ng source code review. Pagkatapos ng source code review, yung source code kasi yan yung nababasa ng tao, ng programmer, para naintindihan nila paano yung proseso. I-compile yan into a machine program para mabasa ng computer naman, magamit ng computer. Ang pinaka-check doon, yung tinatawag na signature hash code, parang, ito na yung programa from a human readable na source code or program, magiging binary na siya na mababasa ng computer. May lalabas na parang checksum. Yung checksum parang sinigurado lang natin na yun yung source code. Nangyari naman yung proseso ngayon. Ang problema, yung lumabas sa checksum, may mali raw. Nung kinumpara namin doon sa pinablish nung international certification body. Ang paliwanag lang na lumabas, hindi kami binalikan ng steering committee noon, ng COMELEC, typographic error. Pero medyo ang hirap ang hirap tanggapin noon I mean, napakalaki ng binayad sa kanila tapos typographic error yung paliwanag, medyo mabigat 'yon. So,
na pwede may copy and paste, di ba?
Disprove hindi nila binigyan ng oras para i-disprove. So, yun lang naman yung ang punto namin. So, syempre,
ito lang.
May haka-haka na.
Okay, para lang maiwasan yung unnecessary suspicion. Kasi nga dito, pag hindi mo pinatulan yung isang angulo, sabihin, pumapopor ka sa kabila, no? Medyo napaka-simplistic ng argument ngayon ng mga tao online, no?
Tama.
Kung wala naman dayaan, unfair doon sa pinagbibintangan. Pero kung may dayaan, edi dapat talagang tutukan nyo, no? Ito bang tong finding ng NAMFREL noong 2020, tama ba?
2022.
2022. Ano ba to? Indicative of cheating ba yan?
Hindi naman siya indicative of cheating, pero pinapakita yung kahinaan nung checks nung proseso. Parang isang check, maaaring sumablay, malaking implikasyon. Pero wala kaming konkretong prueba na nagkaroon ng dayaan.
Okay.
Hindi kami happy sa nangyari sa proseso, pero walang prueba ang NAMFREL na nagkaroon ng dayaan.
Okay. Bago natin pag-usapan yung ibang improvements, no, yung nakita nating binabanggit nung ibang grupo ngayon, yung masyado raw mabilis yung transmission noong election results pagkasara nung polling nung May 2022. Kaduda-duda po ba talaga yun? Yung sinasabi nilang, ba't ang bilis? Biglang sumulpot yung 20 million votes in less than an hour.
Kung titignan mo yung history ng transmission ng votes, actually, mas mabagal pa siya kumpara based sa transmission lang, versus sa 2019 election. So,
paano yun nasabi?
Yung transmission na mabilis. Kasi napakaliit lang naman yung pinadadala. Sabi nila, yung isang argumento na lumalabas doon sa isang grupo, sabi nila dapat ang poll closing aabutin ng minimum 30 minutes. Sabi ko nga, teka, ako mismo, personal na nagbantay sa 2 polling place sa Makati. Umalis ako doon sa isang polling place at 7:08, nakatransmit na sila So, madaling i-disprove Tapos kung yun lang ang basehan mo ng argumento, Ang proseso after the closing, magpiprint siya ng 8 kopya ng election returns, tas ipopost na yung isa, no, para makita ng publiko, magta-transmit. Tapos magpiprint uli sila ng 22 more copies. Kung nadaya yun, di may makikita tayong sablay sa comparison between the printed copies and the transmitted one. So, wala kami nakita from the side of NAMFREL.
So anong conclusion niyo? Credible yung resulta nung presidential election?
So far, no, from our even from our report, ano, yun yung resulta. Hindi kami happy sa proseso na ginawa nila sa paglalagay ng checks kasi parang naging compliance lang yung check, dinaanan lang. Maraming pwedeng improve. Yun nga yung dahilan kaya sumulat kami ng papel para teka, improve natin, ano.
Okay. Yung binabanggit ng grupo na pag kinondak mo raw yung time and motion study, parang improbable na makapag-transmit at least within the first 30 minutes yata yung sinasabi nila, no? Kasi you have to print 8 election returns.
Napakabilis na i-print ng 8 election returns. Wala pang 2 minuto yun. Remember, thermal printer to, hindi to traditional printer. Sinasabi ko nga sa iyo, yung polling place sa Makati, kung saan ako bumoto, kasi binantayan ko yon as NAMFREL, ano, yun yung natoka sa akin. By 7:08 nakatransmit na sila. Tandaan nyo, ang proseso niyan, ano, sa mga sa polling place, pag wala na pumapasok sa polling place, isasara yung gate ng eskwela. Kung meron pang nakapila ron, papapasukin. Pero sasara yung gate. Karamihan sa polling place, kunwari, lalo na sa Metro Manila, bago pa mag-7, wala nang pumapasok. So 7 eksakto sinara yung gate. Wala nang bumoboto. May mga extraneous case na naghihintay kasi nasira yung BCM, pero maliit din yung bilang ngayong eleksyon, no? So karamihan natapos 7. Yung closing procedure, ginawan din namin ng time and motion study yan, hindi lalampas ng 3 minuto. Yung printing, another 3 minutes.
Okay. Ito may tanong.
Is just a minute or 2. Napakaliit ng packet na ipapadala eh.
Okay. Ito sir, may tanong. Paano nyo po ma-explain na nag-transmit na ang COMELEC ahead sa pinapakita ng transmission server? Hindi rin nagtugma yung oras. Lumulutang din yan ng social media, di ba, online?
Hindi ko maipaliwanag yun kasi hindi ko alam kung ano yung basis nila ng mga numerong yun, ano. Publicly available naman pinakita, no, lahat ng transmission ng VCM, ano. So pag tinignan mo sa VCM, nagtutugma naman yan, ano. Tandaan nyo na maraming beses i-transmit. 3 beses mag-transmit yung VCM, ano. Ikumpara mo dapat sa unang transmission. Mag-transmit siya sa primary server, secondary, tapos sa transparency.
Okay. So pwedeng ang ikinumpara yung sumunod o yung pangatlo?
Maaring yun, no.
So kailangan
tapos,
doon sa una-una.
Simple lang naman niya kung talagang may nakita silang dayan, simple yan. Maraming kopya yung election returns. Hanap lang sila ng isang kopya ng election return na hindi nag-match sa resulta sa transparency server. Tapos na yun.
Yan ang parang hindi matanggap ng iba kasi. Kasi actually, di ba, ang napakasimple lang ito. Kung gustong malaman kung nagkadayaan, ikumpara mo nga yung lumabas election return, which is available. Tapos yun ba yung nabilang? Yun ba yung sinasabi niyo?
Yun eh. Kasi binigay naman ng COMELEC, in fairness to them, binigay naman nila yung access sa lahat ng datos.
Yun nga, yung bilis ng transmission, may issue ba talaga ron?
Wala. Mabagal pa nga yun eh. Napakaliit lang ng packet ng ang isang litrato, pag pinadala mo ngayon sa cellphone, siguro kasya dun sa size ng isang litrato na kinunan mo sa cellphone mo, ang 5 hanggang 10 ER. Gaano kabilis magpadala ng litrato ngayon? Segundo lang, di ba?
Teka lang, sasagot lang ako ng isang troll dito. Si January Iil. Mukhang gustong kumita. January, kung nakikinig ka sa discussion, kung sino man yung poon mong politiko, actually yung kinikwento rito ni JR, pabor pa nga sa poon mo eh. Pero mukhang hindi mo naintindihan yung pinag-uusapan dito. Okay? Ang pinag-uusapan niya rito yung facts as they found them after the election. Hindi to partisan discussion, ha? So shut up ka muna dyan, January. Mukhang hindi ka nakikinig. Kung gusto mo mang troll, makinig ka man lang sa usapan para gumanda-ganda naman yung sinasabi mo. Ayan. Okay?
Kami wala kaming pinoprotektahan, ano? Ang sinasabi namin, ang mandato ng NAMFREL is protektahan yung boto kahit sino nanalo. So ginagawa namin 'yun. Sa totoo nga, kaya nga 'di ba, may rekomendasyon kami para ma-improve yung mga susunod na halalan.
Pupuntahan natin yan. O sige, ito
Oo.
muna. May isang nagsasabi rito, mukha raw apologies kayo ng Comelec eh. Ano masagot nyo ron?
Ako personal, ano, inaaway ko 'yan 'pag ano, in one instance, for example, sinipa ako sa meeting ng steering committee dahil hindi nila nagustuhan yung mga technical ano ko, recommendation. Hindi ako nag-apologize sa kanila, inaaway namin sila hanggang ngayon 'pag hindi tama yung sinasabi nila. In fact, kung titignan niyo yung report ng NAMFREL, hanggang ngayon hinihiling namin na ipakita nila paano yung trusted build ginawa at pakita yung tamang hash code.
Okay. Yung ano,
Okay.
di ba kasama kayo sa advisory group ng Comelec?
Kasama kami hanggang 2022. Ngayong 2025, yung bago, nalaman lang namin ng Senate hearing na hindi na raw kami kasama.
Tinanggal na kayo. Bakit daw?
Hindi namin alam yung dahilan eh. Dahil, well, nakasulat naman sa batas na prerogative yan ng head ng DICT, no? Pero normally, ano, in the past few elections, nakasama kami sa Comelec Advisory Council. Ang nangyayari dyan, iimbitahin lahat. Tapos ipapaliwanag kung sino maging miyembro. Hindi naman sa pagbubuhat ng Bangko Christian, kung titignan mo ang minutes of meetings ng Comelec Advisory Council, especially in 2022, pag tinignan mo sino may ginawang maraming report doon at maraming recommendation, lilitaw naman siguro ang pangalan ng NAMFREL.
Okay. Eto, sige. Kasi nga, medyo complicated yung ating automated election system. Marami siyang parts and layers, no? Na talagang understandably, hindi ganun kadali ipaliwanag sa ordinary people. Ito yung usually nadidinig kong tinatanong nila, no? How sure are we na nabilang yung boto natin? O kung nabilang man, tama?
Yan nga yung sakit ng ano, no, ng sistema ngayon. Hirap na tayong ipaliwanag sa tao na nabilang. Kasi ang nangyari, ang nagbilang ng boto is yung programa na nakapaloob sa BCM.
Okay. Explain natin yung proseso. Ito, yung meron kayong ano.
Tama.
Yan,
Okay.
sige.
So, pag bumoto ka ngayon, okay, maraming checks sila or protection, ano? So, una, boboto ka dun sa ballot, yung actual ballot, ano? Yung isi-shade mo. Pagkatapos mong i-shade ng actual ballot, ipapasok mo yan doon sa VCM. Paglabas niya sa VCM, pagpasok niya sa VCM, ilalabas naman ng VCM yung VVPAT, yung Voters Verifiable Paper Audit Trail.
Ito yung
Para
resibo.
ang purpose nun, yung shinade ko, yun ba yung binasa ng makina? So yan yung first check. Yan yung first check. Okay. Ang next check kasi, which is yung being contested, ano? Na-check ko nga na tama yung boto. Tama ba yung pagbibilang ng makina? Ang challenge ngayon, programa yon. It's a program within the current AES. So, ang nakikita lang ng tao, yung VCM, ang susunod nila makikita yung transparency server na.
Oo.
So, yun yung challenge. Ang daming black box doon. So, tapos nga, sabi ko nga, yung 2022 experience, ano? 2022 experience, ano ba nangyari? Yung mga tao nagbabantay ng VVPAT kasi ayaw nilang ipapasok sa iba yun. Baka manakaw yung boto nila.
Pero does it matter?
VVPAT, hindi nagagamit kahit saan.
Hindi nga, yung resibo na yon, can they even keep it? Di ba hindi naman nila pwede itago yun?
Bawal because of the privacy ng ano,
Na
no?
hindi rin pwedeng picturean, di ba?
Bawal kasi
Oo.
ano yun eh. Pag pinicture mo, pwede mong gamitin ano yan, pang vote buying. Ano? Ito yung
Oo.
resibo na pinoto ko.
Oo.
So, ang problema doon, pagkatapos ng eleksyon, wala nang gamit yun.
Okay.
So
anong suggestion nyo? How can we improve this? Para at least naman, understandably, syempre gusto ng mga tao, makita nila, nabilang ba ng tama yung boto namin?
Kami, yan nga yun, isa sa trinabaho namin sa CAC noong 2022, sa Comelec Advisory Committee, maglagay ng standards. Yung standards, sabi nga namin, una sa lahat, hindi kami pumapabor sa kahit kaninong hardware or software vendor. Dapat standard yan. Ano ibig sabihin ng standard? Dapat susunod ka lang sa format, susunod ka lang sa style, kahit anong hardware, kahit anong software ang gagamitin mo. So una naming rekomendasyon, gumawa ng tinatawag na voter verified ballot. Ano ibig sabihin doon? Ngayon kasi yung balota, sinishade natin, pumapasok dun sa ballot box, wala na nangyayari. Tapos na. Kung may protesta, maaaring bibilangin nila uli, pero tapos na. Ang gusto namin mangyari, boboto ka kahit anong paraan, ano? Pwedeng shade mo pa rin yung boto. Pwedeng diretso sa computer, pwedeng pinrint lang. Ang magiging output nun, yung balota. So printing machine na lang ang kailangan mo sa isang presinto. Yung balota ngayon, nababasa mo kung sino yung binoto mo, ilalagay mo sa ballot box.
Okay.
Kahit regular na ballot box lang. So yan yung unang standard. Voter verified ballot. Kasi accountable form yung ballot. Yan talaga yung binibilang.
Okay.
Next standard na gusto namin, na nagawa na naman dati pa ng COMELEC, dual recording. Ano ibig sabihin namin ng dual recording? Kung titignan nyo yung VVPAT or maski yung electronic return na pinrint ng dalawang portion. Sa taas, may tinatawag na human readable. Yun nababasa natin. Sa baba, may machine readable. Ang ginamit nilang pamamaraan sa machine readable is yung QR code. So, ano bang gamit nun? So, yung QR code, pwede mong gamitin yan for any computer-aided reading. So, halimbawa, ang nakalagay doon, for President Jose Rizal, yun din yung equivalent na lalabas sa QR code. So, yan yung pangalawang standard din na tinutulak namin. Dual, So, dapat magtugma yung computer reading at saka dun sa manual human readable reading. So, ang pinopropose namin ang proposal namin pala dito na ma-improve yung sistema, meron kang dalawang portion, human readable, tapos machine readable, ilalagay mo yung balota pagkatapos mong bumoto, na-verify mo na, Ikaw yung nag-verify ng balota, kaya nga voter verified ballot, Pagkatapos, at the end of polling, poll close, bibilangin sa harap ng tao.
Okay.
Yung balota.
Pero
yan yan yung pinakamabigat na standard na gusto namin gawin.
Itatara pa ba yan?
Voter verified ballot, precinct-based counting.
Okay. Pero
Public counting.
paano bibilangin?
Private voting, public counting. So pagbilang, pwede naman computer aided. Sabi ko nga, katulad for example ng QR code, Kung may QR code ka, madadagdagan siguro yung voting process ng, pagpalagay natin, 15 or 30 minutes mo na. Kasi gumawa na kami ng time motion study. Pinropose na namin to sa COMELEC before. Ayaw nila. So, dagdagan mo ng 30 minutes na yung boto, pero nakita ng lahat ng tao sa presinto paano nabilang lahat ng balota.
Okay.
So,
Sir,
etong
pinopropose nyo na additional layer na up to 30 minutes ang aabutin na karagdagang oras sa pagboto, sa buong proseso, Ito ba, would this fall under a hybrid definition?
Kami, agnostic kami kung ano yung format. Pwedeng fully computerized, pwedeng hybrid, Pero ang pinaglalaban namin ngayon, kailangan precinct-based counting. Hindi pwedeng program-based counting. Yung VCM kasi siya nagbilang eh.
Oo nga. Ito yung sagot dun sa gusto nang makita ng iba na gusto ko nakitang binibilang yung boto ko.
Tama. Tama
Whether
naman.
itatara yan tulad ng unang panahon or ibang sistema, basta nakita ko.
Tama.
Okay.
Tama. By the way, Christian, since may human readable pa rin naman doon sa balota eh. Pagkatapos mo i-transmit, pwede mo itara uli. Di may automatic RMA ka 100% per precinct. Kung gusto mo lang, pwede ka rin gumamit ng makabagong teknolohiya. For example, yung tinatawag na OCR, Optical Character Recognition. Kayang basahin yung text doon eh, kasi printed naman maayos yun eh. Di ba? So, pwedeng ma-automate yung ganung process. Tapos, bibigay lang natin yung standard ng QR, kanya-kanya kayong paggawa ng pambasa ng pagbilang. Dahil may standard eh.
Okay.
So, yung pagbilang natin, pwede mo papilahin yan. COMELEC, yung kanilang BEI or Election Board, Board of Election Inspector, papasa mo dun sa first checker, sa next checker, pwede yung major political party, minor political party, pwedeng election arm, ganun eh, di ba? Isigudo na mag-scan eh. So dumaan sa inyo lahat, dapat magbalanse lahat yun.
Tsaka mas magkakasilbi yung watcher. Kasi dati medyo nabawasan.
May silbi yung watcher.
Dati nabawasan eh. Hindi naman niya nakikita eh.
So pagkatapos nun, kung gusto nyo pang dagdagan yung checks, nandun yung balota eh. O di itaras nyo.
Ito sir,
gusto nyo pa,
okay. Ito issue rin to, yung cost. Magkano yung additional cost niya kung sakasakali?
Sabi nga namin, even with the existing system, with the existing cost, kayang ipatupad ito. Kasi wala nang masyadong komplikado. Ang nagpamahal sa ating election system is the VCM. Dahil specialized box siya eh. Ang kailangan ko na lang sa presinto is something that can print on a secure ballot. Printer na lang halos eh. So if I secure it, if I put additional protection to it, I would believe it would be the same cost. Baka cheaper pa. Isa nga sa proposal namin, standard computer lang, standard printer lang. Protektahan mo yung ballot eh. Printed naman yan by the National Printing Office, di ba? Yun naman isi-secure mo eh. Pag print nun, standard code lang naman ng QR, standard printing lang. Tapos yung computer, pagkatapos ng election, i-donate na ng COMELEC sa DepEd. Di may laptop na si BEI.
Para magamit. Okay. O, sige. Mr. JR Contreras, maraming salamat po for joining us tonight. Maraming salamat sa tiyaga ng pagpapaliwanag nyo. Sana
maraming salamat din. Sana nakatulong. I mean, alam ko may marami pa ring haka-haka pero ang hiling nga namin, pakinggan yung kabuuan. Kami sa NAMFREL, wala kaming kinikilingan. Kanya-kanyang paniniwala yan. Pero kailangan factual eh. Kailangan may basehan ka. Hindi pwedeng nakahugot ka lang ng isang numero, yun yung gagamitin mong basehan. Bigyan mo lang ng proof. Napakalaki at saka napakaraming proseso pinagdaanan. Maski ng NAMFREL, para siguraduhin na may katotohanan yung election natin. So, hindi kami happy completely, pero hindi namin sinasabing nagkaroon ng dayang. Wala kami. We don't have enough proof to say it. So,
okay. Sige. Maraming salamat, Mr. JR Contreras ng NAMFREL. Salamat po sa inyo. Yan. Okay, nadinig po natin ang ating interview with Mr. JR Contreras. Okay, puntahan naman po natin yung ating second topic, no? Okay, so nakikiramay po tayo doon sa pamilya at mga kaibigan ni former Foreign Secretary Alberto Rosario. And ngayong gabi, mas pag-usapan po natin yung kanyang importanteng contributions bilang isa sa mga pinakamagaling na diplomats natin dito sa Pilipinas. At saka doon po sa kanyang contribution in particular doon po sa ating arbitral victory sa Permanent Court of Arbitration sa The Hague. Makakasama po natin ngayong gabi si Ambassador Henry Bensurto. Siya po ang ating ambassador sa Turkey. Siya po ang naging lead counsel ng Department of Foreign Affairs component of the Philippine legal team relating to the South China Sea arbitration. At the same time, siya rin po ang naging tagapamuno ng West Philippine Sea Center ng DFA. At isa po siyang close advisor kay former Foreign Secretary Alberto Rosario sa issue po ng South China Sea. Siya rin po yung naging lead negotiator on the proposed Code of Conduct on the South China Sea. Dapat pala, Ambassador, no, pa kayo in-interview, no? Isa po yan sa mga tinututukan nating issues dito sa Fax First. Magandang gabi po, sir. And Ambassador.
Magandang gabi, Christian. Medyo ambassador designate pa lang naman. Kasi I still have to be confirmed by the commission. I don't want to pursue.
Sorry.
Sige.
Pero okay lang yan. I'm not guilty. Pangunahan na natin. Akala ko dumaan na kayo sa CA. Okay. So wala pa kayo sa Ankara?
Hindi. Nandito pa ako sa Pilipinas.
Okay. Anyway, congratulations po rin, Ambassador Designate Henry Bensurto. Okay, sir. Una, nakikiramay po kami doon sa pagpanaw ni Ambassador and former Foreign Secretary Alberto Rosario, sir. Konting kwento naman, how you knew each other, gaano katagal na kayo magkakilala, kumusta yung working and personal relationship po?
Well, magandang gabi sa iyo, Christian, at sa mga tagapakinig nyo. No? I also join you in extending that condolence to the family. Our prayers and thoughts are with the family, especially with Gretchen, no? Who was with the Secretary when he passed away in that aircraft, Philippine Airlines aircraft. So sa katanungan mo, Christian, una kami nagkakilala ni Secretary Del Rosario nung ako po ay nakabase sa Washington, D.C. as First Secretary and Legal Officer. So, and then he was assigned as an ambassador. Ito po mga 2000 up to 2005. Magkasama po kami doon sa Washington, D.C. At ang una po namin actually pinagtulungan ay ang protektahan ng sovereignty ng Pilipinas doon sa overreaching criminal jurisdiction ng Department of Justice ng United States at the time doon sa mga telecommunication companies natin. Actually, yung kanyang pag-ibig sa ating bayan at protektahan ang ating sovereignty, hindi lang ito sa bansang karating natin dito sa North, but even with whoever, no? In fact, yung unang experience namin with the Secretary, in terms yung kanyang pakikipaglaban sa ating independence, yung pong panahon na yun na nag-exercise ng antitrust jurisdiction yung ating kaibigang bansa, ang Estados Unidos, yung Department of Justice. And sa awa naman po ng Diyos, kami naman po ay nanaig at sa makikita po ninyo ang ating telecommunication, ang mga executives are able to go to the United States without threat of being arrested. So that was the first time. And then we parted ways, and then years after, nung bumalik na po ako sa Washington DC, muli po kaming nagkasama, this time po sa issue naman ng South China Sea at kung paano natin tindigan, tayuan ang ating kalayaan at karapatan sa West Philippine Sea in the context po yung doon sa nangyayari at the time na gusto medyo hindi ayaw pong ipagamit sa atin yung mga dagat na nasa atin naman pong kamay.
Balikan po natin yung yung behind the scenes na nangyari po no, 'di ba? Yung arbitral case that we filed sa Permanent Court of Arbitration, nangyari po yan after magkaroon ng standoff ng 2012 sa Scarborough Shoal, no? Yun po bang decision na yun? How was it made? And was it a difficult decision on the part of the Philippine government? And ano po yung naging role ni Secretary Del Rosario doon in pushing toward that direction?
Napakalaki po ng kanyang role. In fact, hindi po nag-start ng 2012 lang. As soon as he took over po, pinag-isipan na namin lahat niya, especially with his leadership. In fact, if I may po, yung behind the scene, no? Kasi ang ganda po nung istorya. Every year po, nagpa-participate tayo sa ASEAN meetings po. No? And then, at the time po, hindi naman po talaga gusto natin at ni Secretary na dalhin ng China sa third-party adjudication. Naniniwala po siya na ma-resolve natin to and dapat i-resolve natin to sa pag-uusap. Very sincere naman po. And for us to be able to solve this, kailangan maging tapat tayo sa isa't isa. Kaya naman po nung pagpunta sa ASEAN, nag-decide siya, behind the scene po, every year nagpa-participate tayo, meron ng mga prepared speeches, pero on the eve, nagkaroon po kami ng meeting. Tinanong niyo po lahat kami, marami po doon. Ano ba ang tamang dapat gawin? Tinanong niya po kami, dapat ba tayong manahimik o dapat tayong magsalita? At kung magsasalita tayo tungkol sa South China Sea, ano ang dapat nating sabihin? So tinanong niyo po lahat kung ano ang tama. Lahat po nagsabi, yun ang tama. Kaya lang, ang opinion na, kaya lang pag sinabi natin yung totoo, Mr. Secretary, baka magkagulo kasi first time. Pero tinanong niya uli po, pero ano yung tama? And there was unanimity among the group. And then he decided, medyo sa English ko na, because ito yung exact ano niya. If that is what is right, we will do what is right. So, all mismo po, everybody was given the instruction, revise all the speeches, revise all. Imagine niyo po, ang daming na pinagpaguran, bagbaguhin po in a matter of 2 to 3 hours. Because this time, we will be truthful, we will be sincere, we will be friends, but friends who will be sincere in our articulation. And yung sincerity po na yun, sabihin sa ating bansa sa norte na kaibigan, gusto rin namin makipagkaibigan sa inyo, pero mahirap yata makipagkaibigan kung yung paa ninyo tinatapakan yung paa namin. Parang ganun po yun sa
Sorry sir, anong year po ulit ito? And ano yung setting?
ito po yung, I think it was 20, I think ito po yung ASEAN ministerial meeting sa Bali, I think. Sa Bali.
Ministerial meeting level 2, although high level na rin. Binanggit niya na talaga ron. Anong year po?
Oo,
20?
I think it was 2011.
Okay.
And that's when he started to speak in very sincere, very friendly, but serious. Ano po magalang. Alam niya naman po malumani magsalita si secretary. Wala naman po siyang sinabing masama. Kaya lang po nilabas niya na para ma-resolve natin itong problema, kailangan natin pag-usapan. At ang problema na dapat nating pag-usapan, yung 9-dash line claim.
Mm-hmm.
So, yun po ang start nun. And then, alam niyo po, parang dahil first time po yun, maraming nabigla, parang ang Pilipinas naging paraya. Somehow, kasi parang hindi ganun no? Parang this is different from what we usually do. So pag uwi po namin, syempre dahil parang mabigat po 'yon. Again, nagpulong uli po kami pagbalik namin doon sa meeting na yan at tinanong at napag-usapan po namin para ma-assess kung ano yung nangyari. And then ang assessment po, baka yung mga ibang bansa hindi kagad sumuporta sa atin at baka mag-isa tayo, yun po. Baka mag-isa tayo magsasalita tungkol dito. Ang sabi niya po, at ito yung napag-usapan at under his leadership, if this is the right thing to do, we will do what is right, even if we are going to do this alone.
Okay. Pero after nun, ano nangyari? Kumusta yung nag-response?
Ang objective po sana mag-usap ng seryoso. Hindi po yung usapang pag-uusap pero wala namang objective o walang direksyon. Gusto niya pag umupo po, talagang pag-usapan natin with the objective of really resolving. Pero po tumatagal and there were efforts pero parang wala pong nangyayari. And therefore, at that point, I think there were discussions already and he was also in coordination with the president. Maybe we need to open our minds now to other possibilities. Maybe, in addition to the bilateral and multilateral diplomacy, we have to think about other creative options. And that one of those creative options is the possibility of bringing our northern neighbor to a third-party adjudication. And so nagbigay siya ng instruction na pag-aralan ito, but at the same time, we continue to push and we could continue to talk with China to somehow agree with us to negotiate seriously the issue of the South China Sea. So parallel po yun, and then nangyari po yung Scarborough Shoal, and because of that Scarborough Shoal incident, when it was very clear na wala naman talagang patutunguhan yung pag-uusap at parang ikot lang tayo ng ikot. And in the meantime, na ikot tayo sa pag-uusap, nawawala yung atin. So there has to be a willed decision to protect what is ours. And the option that was left for us to explore eventually led to the arbitration. And by the time we were now have a clarity essentially of what to do. And the president gave the go signal the following year in January 2013 on the very day that this was decided by the president at that time together with his cabinet and other consultants. It was decided that we have to now do what needs to be done, which is resorting to third-party adjudication. And that was something like January 13. January 2013. Right.
Pero tama po ba, as early as 2011, talagang sinabi na ni Secretary Del Rosario, pag-aralan yung possibility na magsampa ng kaso sa Permanent Court of Arbitration?
Tama po. Kasi at the time, may proseso po kami na pag-aralan ng gusto yung issue na to, and then see the entire landscape, and then uh, uh, study what are the options essentially that are available to us, knowing that the seriousness of the issue and the gravity and the enormity of the challenge. And so hindi po linear, hindi po one-track mind. It was a very broad appreciation of all possible options for the country.
Okay. So nung finala po natin yung yung dinala na po natin yung issue, yung kaso sa Permanent Court of Arbitration nung January 2013. Alam natin may ano yan, 'di ba? Kumusta naman yung naging role ni Secretary Del Rosario doon sa pag-harmonize ng Philippine position? Kasi maraming inputs po yan, 'di ba, from many different components ng ating team.
Totoo po yan. I think one thing that you can attribute to the Secretary during this time was yung kanyang focus, yung kanyang strong will. And as soon as we did this, nakatutok po talaga siya rito. And it became a unifying factor, essentially. Of course, with the president at the time, because the chief architect of the foreign policy is always the president, whoever is the sitting president. And so the secretary would always coordinate this with the president, explain essentially what's happening and what are the options for us. And so yung kanyang role po, he is at the center essentially in terms of harmonizing, consolidating our position, because I just want to take note that the arbitration path was just one of the components of our foreign policy. It was not the arbitration was not the entire policy. Rather, the arbitration was part of the overall framework, which at the time we have termed it as the principled foreign policy, because it is anchored on doing what is right. At least that is the perspective of the secretary. So he was always guided by this principle every time we have a discussion on the South China Sea.
Can you talk about, sir, yung role ni Secretary Del Rosario doon sa mga pagkakataon na habang nililitigate to sa PCA, medyo nagkakainitan yung mga yung mga miyembro ng Philippine team as to how to approach certain issues, no? How did he handle those?
The secretary handled it very well. I think he has both the intelligence and the character. He speaks with a very soft voice, but very strong-willed, essentially. And because you see the high moral tone in what he speaks, he's able to command respect. And obviously, there will be different perspectives that will be put on the table. And the secretary has a unifying, he has a unifying power, to put us all together in the same direction. But the secretary also has the humility. He understands his own limitations. He provided the political will there in those discussions. But at the same time, he listens also to the expert opinion. And he recognizes that all of us operate within our area of expertise, and therefore took that into account and never substituted his own understanding and will on matters of technical and legal. And so he will take the cue. He will try to understand the political and legal aspect of this, and then bring in his own political calculations. And so with those combinations, we're able to craft an option and a direction that was doable, even if sometimes very challenging. And his character willed all of us through all of those challenges and brought us to the logical conclusion of the arbitration process.
Can you talk about a particular sticking point po? Kung saan talagang nagkainitan as to how to move forward and paano pumasok yung si Secretary Del Rosario?
Well, ang issue po, of course, there were several contentious issues. On the matter of Ito Aba, for example, the question of whether or not to include it in
Oo.
in our in our submission. Is it something that we need to address or not? Obviously, there will be differences, and we accept that. The secretary accepted that. We accepted that there will be different perspectives on this, but at the same time, he also believed that Ito Aba issue was the elephant in the room, and therefore, as the elephant in the room, it is something that cannot be simply ignored. And so from his perspective, it was something that we have to address. And he and and he believed in that and put his idea on the table. We made a presentation to the president at the time, as well as the other individuals who would have their own opinion. And we're very grateful that the president eventually listened to that perspective. And I think on hindsight now, that decision to include Ito Aba, I think, and was the right thing to do, because from the legal perspective, it resolved the issue in its entirety, more or less, without leaving any doubt as to whether certain areas are disputed or not. And it is because of that clarity and decision to include Ito Aba that now we can say, as a consequence of that arbitral ruling, that if the Philippines has something like 550,000 square kilometers of exclusive economic zone and another 550,000 square kilometers of continental shelf, that's over 1 million of maritime entitlement. And then and that we say that prior to the arbitral ruling, more than 500,000 square kilometers of our EEC and another more than 500,000 square kilometers of our continental shelf were disputed. Now, because of the arbitral ruling, and specifically because we put in also the issue of Ito Aba, now we can say that the only remaining dispute in the South China Sea is about 13,000 square kilometers. 13,000 square kilometers out of 550,000 square kilometers of EEZ. And that's very small. And the consequence of that, that means we were able to recover a huge area of our exclusive economic zone. And what that means is that it is exclusively for Filipino fishermen, that sovereign right. And more importantly, recto bank or reed bank is exclusively ours. There is no doubt as to who has exclusive rights or sovereign rights over reed bank. It's not disputed. Mischief Reef is also not a disputed area. It is exclusively ours, including the second Thomas Shore. And I think this clarity would not have been possible if Ito Aba was not included, because Ito Aba was not resolved, meaning to say that China can still project 200 from Ito Aba.
From Ito Aba at mag-overlap sa atin.
It will impact Reed Bank and it will impact a large area of our exclusive economic zone. And China can always argue merely for purpose of argument, it's disputed. And therefore, as being disputed, you cannot unilaterally explore and exploit that without their consent.
Oo.
But
Kaya
now,
nga, oo. Tama ba,
with that,
sir?
we have the exclusive right to decide how
Oo.
and what to do with that.
Oo. I hope yung mga nanonood at nakikinig sa atin nasundan nyo. Napakalino ng paliwanag ni Ambassador Henry Bensurto, no? So malinaw, kwentas klaras, malinaw, klarong-klaro sa batas ano yung maritime entitlements natin sa ating exclusive economic zone. Pala sir, syempre sa mga reports, hindi tamang sabihin no, disputed West Philippine Sea. Dahil malinaw to sa ruling ng Permanent Court of Arbitration. Tama po ba?
Tama po. The clarification that came about of that ruling, the consequence of that, yung area na dapat disputed, hindi na disputed.
Oo.
And in fact, it was very clear in the ruling that it is exclusively our continental shelf, reed bank, for example. So ganun kaklaro. And so it's wrong now to say they are disputed. There's no more dispute that has been clarified. In fact, if I may go further, we should no longer be talking about dispute because there's no dispute anymore on that. Although China's strategy is to bring back that dispute by not posturing that they don't agree, of course. But legally, they're not disputed anymore. Second, we should not be talking of the 9-dash line anymore because that has been decided.
Walang basis.
The clarity. So they should now be buried 6 feet under the ground, essentially. And we should be moving forward on how now to put into effect the decision, the points decided by the arbitral ruling.
Sige. Yan sir, pag-usapan natin yung possible frustrations on the part of Secretary Del Rosario. Kasi nakaka-attend din ako ng mga press conferences and mga forums kung saan nagsasalita siya after he stepped down. And talagang patuloy niyang pinupush yung idea ng wala mang technically enforcement mechanism yung ruling ng PCA. Pero if you get your friends, your allies together toward this legal victory, parang marami siyang strategies na binabanggit, di ba? Can you talk about certain points or low points as far as possible frustrations are concerned after na napanalunan natin to? Meron bang naikwento sa inyo sa secretary or nababanggit?
One can understand. First, I think we need to every political administration will have their own concept, and we have to take that into account because that's how democracy operates.
Yeah.
And we know that foreign policy is always conducted by the person who is responsible at the helm, and obviously that is always the president. And so from the perspective of professional diplomacy, we have to be able to perceive that and do whatever we can to help. And part of helping really is providing inputs to the decision makers so that our decision makers are not blindsided. So we call a spade, and within the process, put that on the table so that those who will decide based on what is provided them will see the entire landscape. And so there will be no blind sides. What we don't want to happen is to narrow it down to only those options where we are biased. We have to be able to see the entire landscape. And that was the purpose of the secretary, from my perspective, when he puts all of these suggestions on the table, giving some ideas to the political decision makers in terms of what are the possible options. And I think it is from that perspective. Obviously, humanly speaking, if we see it should be done this way and it's not done that way, obviously, it causes a certain disappointment, especially the secretary felt very strongly and on certain options. And he was talking about these options from the perspective of experience, because the secretary was not talking from a perspective of vacuum. So he was not operating on a vacuum here. He had a historical experience together, and with that experience, his own evaluation, and he was putting it on the table. He really just wanted to be helpful. That's my perception. Although sometimes these helpful tips may be taken differently, but I think that from the perspective of the secretary, he has a very sincere appreciation. In fact, if I may, because I saw him before he left. I saw him last week before he left for San Francisco. I could, in all sincerity, indicate how the secretary was very happy with the policy approach of the president, and he was appreciative of that. And so the Secretary Del Rosario, from my perspective, was not being ideological. He was not saying no because he wanted to say no, or he saying yes because he actually tries to understand, regardless of who articulates that. And so I think in that informal chat with the secretary, he did express his satisfaction and his appreciation. The word he used, and I will say this: I think the president is doing well, and I appreciate that.
So, pabor
So
siya
that,
rin sa foreign policy approach ni President
right.
Marcos ngayon.
Yes, the ethical thing, the balancing act, how the president is looking at the national interest, essentially. It's a big burden. It's a serious burden on the shoulder of whoever is going to make a decision. And Secretary Del Rosario understand that, because he once upon a time had that responsibility. I've seen that happen many times. If I may recall one incident, Christian, if you don't mind, the
Go
first
ahead, sir.
time that we presented our political framework for consideration by the by ASEAN, I went to his room to have a one last discussion with him. We normally do that before he proceeds. He was. I know that he was very seriously concerned about how this will transpire. I'm talking of the framework of Sophia. We were putting it for the first time. He was praying the rosary. He was praying the Holy Rosary.
Talaga?
People may not know this, and the Secretary Del Rosario normally doesn't want to talk religion in a conversation. He doesn't want to appear righteous than anyone else. He respects the opinion of people, especially on religious matters. He was very careful about that, as to the privacy of people. But he's a very religious man. And every time there is a major event, he always has a rosary in his pocket. This I know. And he and I know when a forthcoming event is something that he has very serious concern, that he will pray that rosary. He will have a silent moment in his room, and he will do that rosary.
So
So
pag
I know.
pag nakita niyo yung rosary kay Secretary Del Rosario, you know na merong very, very important decision to be made.
Yes, that I can say. That I can say. And last week when he was going, in fact, he's normally not religious, but last week he was very religious. He told me, and he was excited. Henry, I'm going to San Francisco. So I asked him, why are you going there? And he said, I'm going there to be with Our Lady. I'm quoting him exactly. To be with Our Lady. What do you mean, sir? I'm going to be with Our Lady in San Francisco for 3 days. And I said, why? I've been there before, sir. What particular shrine? I'm not of that shrine. He said, Our Lady of Miracles, something like that. And they said, I haven't heard of that. And he said, no, it's a, and he showed me the picture. This is Our Lady of Miracle. It's a statue. And he said, it will be brought to the house of his sister, and he will fly there to spend time with Our Lady. From Monday to Thursday, and he will not be doing anything outside of just being with Our Lady. Those are his words.
So he was a devotee of Mother Mary, the Virgin Mary.
As I mentioned, Christian, normally he will not be talking about religion. But last week, he was extra sentimental. and he was extra religious, and he
Mm.
was looking forward to spending time with Our Lady, essentially. So that so it for me it was an extraordinary conversation because the secretary spent a lot of time talking about Our Lady. Uh, 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 as I mentioned, religion for him is a very private thing for every individual, and he would be very careful to intrude into that privacy.
Mm.
But he was very outspoken at the time.
How would you how would you describe him as a diplomat? Kasi ang dami natin nakikita mga testimonial sa kanya, pero kayo someone who actually worked with him very closely.
Oh, he's an a diplomat extraordinaire from my perspective. Not only in terms of his character, how he conducts himself, the very character and the substance that he puts into the actions, into the things that he does. Normally, he will walk the talk. One thing that makes the secretary very credible is his penchant to make sure that whenever he articulates or say something, he will try to make good of that. Uh, uh, so 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 he's somebody that will try his best to walk the talk, and I think that gives a lot of credibility and translate that personality in terms of diplomacy. Then you know how that kind of character and substance and demeanor would be able to command respect, and that's how it was on the time that I was with him as he conducts that diplomacy. I saw how he's able to command respect, and I think the evidence to that is the fact that we're able to move the country in terms of our diplomacy in very significant steps in the South China Sea, uh, in ASEAN, and in terms of other aspects of our conduct, diplomatic conduct, and much of that can be attributed to the secretary, his persona, his own character, his own demeanor, and his ability and his credibility and his ability to walk all the time his talk. And,
Mm.
and when you look at the substance of what he says, you can see the seriousness and the sincerity. And I think this is what other diplomats are able to see from the secretary. That sincerity that spills over, and I think that impacts them. And it is that sincerity that, at the end of the day, was able to move uh, policymakers from other countries to try to accommodate and somehow listen to our own articulation. And if one is going to look at how the secretary was able to move ASEAN in terms of where we want ASEAN to go, empirically you will see how much the secretaries impacted the direction of ASEAN. Essentially, if I may,
Go,
uh,
sir.
uh, for a long time, South China Sea was not part of the official agenda
Oo.
of ASEAN. If ever, it was only discussed on the side, but
Yeah.
never part of an official agenda. And the reason for that is because obviously China would not want this to be part of the agenda of ASEAN. And then comes 2012, Cambodia.
Mm.
And it became a litmus test for us. And we stood, the secretary, with his leadership, we stood our ground for what is right. That even if there's no joint statement, we will not budge, we will not blink, because what we are articulating is what is right. And so there was no, there was no joint statement that year. But you
Yeah.
may notice the year after that, the
Nag-
issue of South China Sea
Nagkaroon na.
became part of the official agenda every
Oo.
year. And to this day, the reason why we are able to discuss South China Sea in a very official way as part of the official agenda is primarily because of that. It was a heroic deed, and when that was done, the secretary got a lot of flack, and the term microphone diplomacy came into being, right? A very pejorative, which is not true, really, because we were not say the secretary never badmouthed any country. He was sincere, but the sincerity was given that interpretation. It was more of a twist by critics. But in all of those engagements, I have not seen the secretary badmouth anyone, but he was very straightforward in a very sincere way. And at the end of the day, it was that sincerity that has brought the possibility of of, of the problem now being resolved, or at least discussed seriously. Because how can you resolve a problem when you ignore it, when you don't even talk about it? And it was he who was able to put that issue on the table as an important agenda. And as such, therefore, people will have to pay attention. And I think we are where we are now precisely because of those strong-willed um, articulations of the secretary. Obviously, the president at the time, because the chief architect of every foreign policy at every administration should be the president. So as I praise the secretary, this is not meant to take away any
Yeah.
credit from anyone.
Yeah.
And so that's not the intention. But 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 solely from the perspective of the secretary, this is how I knew him. This is what I saw to the last end. The consistency, the constancy, the credibility, the integrity, and all of those help the Philippines conduct its diplomacy at the highest level.
Indeed, Ambassador Designate Henry Bensurto, no? So many memories, so many things to remember the former secretary for. And sir, maraming salamat po for taking the time to join us tonight. And I know, no in-invite ko kayo, talagang ang bilis yung umuo because I realize how important this is for you also as someone very close to the secretary. Pero sir, we thank you for talking to us about the secretary. Salamat po, sir.
Thank you also, Christian, and thank you for remembering the secretary. I think he's a real hero, a true hero. Uh, we might have lost a friend, but the country lost a hero, a good man, a national treasure. And I think his works uh, will reverberate in the long future, essentially. And it is my hope that future young generations of Filipinos can come back and study and learn from the secretary. Thank you very much.
Okay. Maraming salamat po, Ambassador Designate Henry Bensuto, sir. Thank you, thank you. Maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Thank you.
Okay. Si Ambassador Henry Bensurto nakasama po natin for this interview, and I hope that was actually our intention, no, to pay tribute to a good man na maraming contributions po sa ating bansa. And you heard it straight from someone who worked with him for a long time and actually was very close to him, especially dun sa mga moments na talagang big decisions had to be made. Okay. Maraming salamat po for joining us tonight, and magkita-kita po tayo uli sa darating na Biyernes for another episode of Facts First. Again, maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat and good evening.